Hey y'all, it's Monday morning, June 22nd, and we welcome you to another edition of This Week at AMG. Thank you for joining us today. It is a privilege to be able to share with you some of the exciting things that the Lord is doing through AMG around the world. Today, we are going to be focusing on the country of Turkey and our media evangelism efforts. AMG has been working in Turkey for more than 20 years now. And through the years, we have seen a lot of fruit as we have used newspapers and the internet, and we've worked with partners there to make the gospel known in this primarily Muslim country. Throughout all this time, we have been working in partnership with a very faithful couple that God has been using in an amazing way to make the gospel known. Today, we are going to hear from them, and I hope you enjoy as they share about what the Lord is doing in Turkey.
Thank you, Tassos. We work in Turkey, and we work with something called the Bible Correspondence Course. Turkey is a country of about 80 million people and only around 5,000 believers. So it's largely an unreached country. And the main thing we use to do to reach Turkey with the gospel is the Bible Correspondence Course and something that came out of that called TACO, which is a creative arts ministry. But AMG has been sponsoring newspaper advertising and media advertising in Turkey for approximately 25 years, and we've seen many people come to faith through that, especially through the newspaper advertising, which was a key way to reach people for many years, and it still is, although internet has taken has become the most important tool in recent years. Another statistic is that although the majority of the people that respond to the course are through internet advertising, and the response from newspaper advertising has gone down drastically, still the best response is through newspaper advertising. A great statistic we found out a few years ago by charting those who wrote in was that over 50% of those who wrote in from prisons wrote in through the newspapers, which is logical since they don't have internet in the prisons. But the response rate in prisons is over 50%, and that's basically through newspaper advertising. This one follow-up worker has seen 4 churches planted through his efforts, and that's mainly because of the intensity that he gives to follow-up. He calls everyone immediately, instead of waiting for them to do a correspondence course or for them to show real interest. He'll call them and say, did you receive your materials? And would you like to actually meet and talk more about Jesus Christ? And through that, through his proactiveness in doing that, he's seen 4 churches planted in the last several years. So that's an exciting story of what has happened.
Thank you so much, Tassos, and it's really great to be able to share what God's doing in the Muslim world these days. I know most Americans, when they think of the word Islam, when they think of the word Muslim, a lot of not very positive images come to mind. But after 30 years in the Muslim world, I have a lot warmer and fuzzier images that come to mind. But I really want to share something that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that I really want the people who pray for AMG to know about is, imagine this, not hardly anybody is aware of this statistic, but more Muslims have come to faith in the last 15 years than they have in the 1400 years before that. I mean, imagine that. Isn't that an incredible statistic? And the reason for that is a lot of the things that people think are negative. We have a joke a little bit that the greatest missionary of the 20th century was Ayatollah Khomeini, because until 1979 there were probably 200 believers from a Muslim background in Iran. And through his efforts and people seeing the real face of Islam, there are now probably over 1 million believers from a Muslim background originally from Iran. That's all over the world. God has done something really supernatural amongst Iranians. But we're seeing that all over the Muslim world in many ways. When people see the true face of Islam, they're often not very excited about what that shows. And so now, I have to confess, for me too, ISIS is a scary thing. The put those black things over their face. It took me a while to pray about that to make sure my heart stayed right toward it. But we're already saying that maybe ISIS are going to be the greatest missionaries of the 21st century because of what we're hearing around the world that's come as a result of the terrible things they're doing. And I don't want to minimize many of those things. But right now, if we think about in Syria, workers had a hard time staying in Syria. The small, nominal or historic Christian church in Syria was quite frightened, and there was hardly any believers from a Syrian background. What's happened as a result of both the political situation in Syria and ISIS, we have now hundreds, if not thousands, of people who've come to faith during that time. And something that's exciting to me is particularly amongst the Kurds. There was hardly any Kurdish believers in the Near East. Now, as a result of the efforts and the things that have happened in the last few years in South Lebanon and in Jordan and Syria particularly, there are now hundreds of Kurdish believers. Many Kurdish churches have started, and I have a little team of Kurdish believers working with me. As everybody knows in the news, probably close to 1 million Syrians have poured over the Turkish border in the last year. And in a little town called Suruç on the border of Turkey, between Turkey and Syria, I have a little team of Kurdish believers who are reaching out to the people who've come and the refugees there. Now, I wish I could say that they were giving out lots of food and blankets, but actually so many people are giving out foods and blankets, they didn't have to do that. They're starting Bible studies. They're showing the Jesus film to people, because when people are in a crisis, when people are in trauma, they don't just have physical needs, their spiritual needs are often just as great, if not greater. So the trauma that they're in and that kind of psychological and spiritual crisis brings people to a point where they are searching for where is God in this situation. And my guys down there, they're having a great time sharing with people about Jesus, and people are coming to faith. So when you think about Islam, when you think about the Muslim world, don't be frightened. Don't wonder where God is or what He's doing. I'll tell you what God is doing. God is doing amazing things, greater than we can ask or think, in the Muslim world. So thank you, people who pray for AMG and who support AMG, and please continue to pray that God would open up even more of these Muslim peoples during this time of what looks dark to us, but God takes what the enemy intends for evil and He turns it for good. Thank you.
We are grateful for the faithful partners that the Lord is bringing to us, and it is through those partnerships that we can spread the good news of the gospel. Please be praying for the ministry in Turkey. Pray that many lives will continue to be touched, that the doors will remain open, that the light of the gospel will shine in that country. Also pray for the resources that are needed for our media evangelism ministry. And if you would like to know more or how you can partner with us, please go to our website at www.amginternational.org. Well, that's it for this week, and we hope to see you next week at This Week at AMG.